Courtland Simmons with you here at the CS Racing Report with a 93rd edition of the Whitney Handicap Recap. And let's take a look at this 93rd edition of this mile and eighth classic, a mile and eighth, 3/4 of a million. Won by Improbable in an upset. He wins it by 2 over By My Standards, who was a half length in front of the favorite, Tom's de Tot. Final time 148.65 for the mile and eighth distance. This was a race in which the pace was slow, as Mr. Buff, who gave way on the turn, set the early fractions, the quarter in 25.12, the half in 49.74, and this is when Improbable, ridden by IRAD Ortiz Jr., who gave him an impeccable ride, started to make his move on the turn. Mr. Buff gave way willingly after 3/4 in 113.36. That's 113 and 1/5 in standard time. And this is when By My Standards, who, as Jay Pribben always calls it, was sitting in the catbird seat behind 2 speed horses. Granted, they weren't going at a torrid pace, but he was in a great spot. He began to make an impression in this race as Improbable made his move. He simultaneously made his run. Tom's de Tot, who missed the break completely, lost a couple links in there, which is going to be the word in the street, that he lost a couple links, and that's what cost him. He did start to begin to make progress at this point in the race and was starting to basically get into contention. Code of Honor, who we'll talk about in a minute, he had his, opportunity. He was 2 to 3 wide all the way around there, and as they headed into the bend, Improbable was able to build almost an insurmountable almost a 4-length margin. By My Standards was able to cut into that as Tom's de Tot came on in the stretch. It was a good performance by Improbable, again winning in 148.65, giving Bob Baffert back-to-back wins in the Whitney, joining Scotty Schulhofer, an esteemed company, to win the race 2 years in a row. He won it with McKenzie in 2019, did not send the defending champion back to Saratoga to run back in the Whitney to go back-to-back as a horse, but it didn't matter. Improbable came in off the bench, off a very, very nice win in the Hollywood Gold Cup to prevail here. He joins, as aforementioned, Scotty Schulhofer. He won it in 94 with Colonial Fair, the Belmont Stakes winner from 1993. And then he won the next year, 95, with Unaccounted For. So Baffert heads into esteemed company. And as we transition from the white-haired wizard to the favorite, Tom's de Tot, it was his second straight loss at Saratoga. He had a very, very good record. He's won 3 or 4 times there. It was his first loss in 6 starts under Joel Rosario, so that streak is snapped. He last raced at Saratoga in the Woodward, where he was 4th behind Preservationist, Bal Harbour, and Yoshida, who had been the defending champion going into that race. And so again, it's not really the worst for Tom's de Tot. We'll touch on him in a minute as we get to Code of Honor. First loss in 3 tries at the Spa. He was the Travers winner. He broke his maiden at Saratoga. Won the Travers in 2019. He is really the focus of the disappointments in this race. He was the chief one. Mr. Buff wasn't expected to impact this race, and he didn't, other than, setting a slow pace. And for those who believe that slow pace cost Code of Honor, he got the ideal trip. He was 2 to 3 wide all the way around the racetrack. When he tipped out, he went 4 wide. Some who want to believe that cost him. That's what Johnny Velasquez chose to do. He could have went inside, but he really had no option. And to be honest with you, as I said before in the preview pod, that he doesn't have the back class going a mile and an eighth, but because his resume had been so good at a mile and a quarter, the Florida Derby run against Maximum Security could be excused given his 10 furlong form. And off the Metropolitan Mile, everybody thought he was going to move forward. And if you look at my preview pod, I thought that the suspicion that I had that he had been cooked in the Met Mile sort of came to fruition in this race. That's why I wasn't really as confident as pulling the trigger on him in this race as in last year's Travers. And like I said, he got sauteed. He got marinade sauteed and roasted on the grill in that Metropolitan Mile. And I thought that those 3rd-degree burns that he sustained hadn't fully been treated coming into this Whitney, and that's exactly what happened here. And also, Johnny Velasquez, I don't believe that he got fooled by the pace. He's too experienced a rider to be fooled by the pace and thinking that they were going faster than what they were. There's no way that happened. I think he thought that this horse was going to be able to accelerate and pick up and run these horses down in the stretch, which is why going 4 wide like he did in the Travers wasn't going to be a problem with him. But as Jerry Bailey has always said, that, and I'm paraphrasing here, if you don't have the horsepower, you can't employ the strategy that you want to execute. And I think he thought that his horse was going to have the horsepower, and he didn't have it. When he pushed that button, everything went dead. there was just no chance for him to make an impression on the front runners in here. And so that confirmed my suspicions on him. He's going to definitely have to freshen up. I don't foresee him running back in the Woodward. By my standards, I was a little surprised he came up to Saratoga, but obviously he'd been training well. I would say he's maybe 50-50. Improbable, same thing. You know, his stablemate McKenzie is being projected. He has a projected path to start in that race. Tom's the top. My guess is going to be that when looking at the status of the division, he is going to probably defend his title at the Fayette Stakes, which is run at the same location as the Breeders' Cup, is where the Breeders' Cup is going to be held, which is Keeneland. So I think that makes all the sense in the world versus going the route that Al Stahl, his trainer, went with Blame in 2010, which was to run in the Gold Cup at 1.25 miles. That may change. But as for the winner, Improbable, I think that he ran a very, very smart race in terms of how Irad Ortiz rode him. He proved that after the Gold Cup that he could scale down in distance and run the race that you're supposed to run that Code of Honor didn't, which was to basically tactically be able to use a little bit of speed to be within striking distance, particularly if you have a front runner setting slow fractions. He was able to do that and be right there, sitting and waiting to stalk and pounce and make the move that he did. I thought he accelerated very, very nicely, drew clear, built the kind of margin when his challengers decided to close in. He had enough wiggle room to be able to register the win. Again, the division is basically, I believe, somewhat wide open, but by committee, there's some strong horses in here. As you see the cluster of horses that I think are the top contenders, again, Code of Honor. Is he still leaps and bounds better than Tacitus at 1.25 miles like he was in 2019? And I think before this, Whitney, I was suspicious, again, wondering whether Tacitus's run in the Suburban has closed and evaporated that gap completely to where that business is not going to be the way that it was the year before, or will Code of Honor separate himself when we do increase in trip? Again, he's going to have to really put things together. Tom Satat, there's going to always be, if he doesn't run in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, a question mark as to whether he can get the 10 furlongs. I believe that it probably won't be a problem, but again, he's got a host of challengers that are going to be trying to wrest the division lead and possibly division championships and Horse of the Year and so forth from him as time goes on. Improbable has certainly made and stamped himself as a serious contender as he turns the tables on Tom Satat, who beat him in the Oaklawn Mile with an emphatic win by 2 lengths in 148.65 in the 93rd edition of the Whitney Handicap. Improbable, trained by the white-haired wizard Bob Baffert, wins the 2020 Whitney Handicap by 2 lengths over By My Standards, who was a half length in front of the favorite Tom Satat, registering a second straight win after an impressive win in the Hollywood Gold Cup. Improbable, your 2020 Whitney Handicap champion.